are about to listen to the Dr. Daliah Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Daliah Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Daliah.
We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. 1-877-DOC-DALI. So the number one question I've been getting from non-physicians since Trump got elected is, how do I feel about RFK Jr.? And I get asked that a lot, and my answer is always the same. Love him. And it's about time. And when I was at a medical conference, and I talked to other doctors about, how they thought the HHS was going. Same thing. It's about time. It's about time somebody tries to get politics out of medicine, says we're going to reevaluate, make sure we're still giving the right and proper information to people. We're not going to be using outdated political narratives as it pertains to a COVID vaccine for healthy pregnant people and 6-month-old babies. Now, we're going to take a look, see if maybe the MMR needs to be boosted, the measles, mumps, rubella shot, because we have, people getting measles who were vaccinated. Even though the majority were unvaccinated, some vaccinated people are coming down with measles. Why? Do we need to reevaluate the shot? We have one of the highest cases of autism we've ever had. Can we look into why? What could be, causing either an autistic-like or autism? Let's evaluate and make sure that we are giving the American people the most up-to-date, evaluated information, and, making sure that we are, not just ignoring things because it was studied back in the 60s. Well, apparently people at HHS aren't happy. And more than 1,000 current and former employees of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services wrote a letter to Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. saying, according to CNN, that his leadership has, quote, put the health of all Americans at risk. Okay, if I thought he was putting you or I at risk, I would tell you. Me and a lot of doctors are like, he's right on the money. So I don't know who is thinking that, there's this risk, I'm not sure where that's coming from. Because I think he's doing what is needed in medicine. It's always been needed in medicine. The letter was also addressed to members of Congress. This kind of stemmed from, one, Trump getting elected, because people were going to argue, about anything Trump did, and appointing Bobby Kennedy Jr. was something that was controversial. Also, he was a Democrat, a lifelong Democrat. So, people were kind of upset that Trump reached across the aisle and put somebody who was a non-Republican into that office. You'd think they'd be happy about that, but they're not. And then Director Dr. Susan Monterez was fired. And then other senior officials were, they say Monterez was ousted after refusing to, quote, bend to pressure to sign off on new potential vaccine restrictions. Well, I don't understand how doctors aren't in agreement. We all had to pass the same set of boards. We all had to learn the same type of medicine. And, you don't do things to healthy individuals that don't need to be done. This is why the USPSTF, this is what's so hypocritical about what's happening in our health system. The USPSTF, the United States Preventative Services Task Force, has been pretty controversial because for years I've been saying black men need to be screened for colon cancer earlier. They need to be screened for prostate cancer earlier because there's aggressive cancer that could affect them. Yet the U.S. Preventative Services Task Force was, well, you could start at age 50 for colon cancer. And for prostate cancer, well, we're not going to advocate for it, but we do advocate that you talk to your doctor because the risks could outweigh the benefits. And so, the USPSTF has taken a position of don't do to everybody. Don't do too much medicine. So you have that line of thought, and then all of a sudden here we're looking at vaccines where, well, don't do too much, and now people are fighting about it. Some of my email questions, and we're going to try to get to all of them, was, how do I feel about, vaccine restrictions? And I don't think this is, we're talking about restrictions. From what I understand, RFK Jr. said whoever wants them can get them. But we're not going to be recommending to everybody, all pregnant people, all infants at 6 months old, to get something. Now, where one of you asked, why do these even matter? Well, because insurance has to decide what to pay for. Insurance goes to the USPSTF. Insurance goes to the CDC, the recommendations. And if they get an out, they're out. They don't want to have to pay for it. Now that Obamacare says they have to have, they have to pay for physicals, et cetera, what you get is bare minimum. They're going to go by the letter of the law. And if it doesn't say, I'm still paying for colonoscopies. My colonoscopy is supposed to be free under Obamacare. It's not. If they find a technicality, well, you had a biopsy, so it wasn't screening, it was diagnostic, now we don't have to pay. My mammograms, I still pay. I pay more for mammograms than I ever have since Obamacare. Because they say, well, it's not the basic screening. Because my doctor doesn't want the basic screening. She also wants the ultrasound. She wants a more thorough test done. Well, then that doesn't get paid for. So these insurance companies, will base what they decide to pay for on these recommendations. And so the American Academy of Pediatrics says, but we want 6-month-olds, every one of them, to get a free COVID shot. So we want that recommendation to be there. But if we're running out of money, what you're going to talk about in the next segment, if we're running out of money, don't we have to figure out who needs the benefits or not? Just like able-bodied young strapping men on Medicaid who are not sick, why aren't they working? 1-877 Doc Daliah.
This is an urgent announcement for anyone that's $10,000 or more in debt. Before you make another minimum payment, you need to know there are special programs that can completely free you of your debt. Total Financial Freedom can help you become debt-free in months instead of years. Resolve your credit card debt, signature loans, department store cards, internet loans, and timeshares. Call Total Financial Freedom now at 800-878-6020 for a free consultation. For 16 years, Total Financial Freedom has helped thousands get out of debt. You can feel confident when calling because Total Financial Freedom is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau. Battling for years and years, stuck in the endless cycle of minimum payments could take decades. You have the right to get your debt resolved and substantially reduce your monthly payments. Call Total Financial Freedom now at 800-878-6020. That's 800-878-6020. 800-878-6020.
Let's face it, guys, we're living in times where the truth is becoming more suppressed and censorship is increasing at an alarming rate, especially on social media platforms. It's Clyde, and I want to tell you about a safe and secure digital playground we put together just for you. It's Aftermath.media. You get access to thousands of Ground Zero archives and podcasts, along with our private social media groups with your basic membership starting at only $7 a month. Each subscription includes tech support, access to the RSS feeds, along with our own chat room and Telegram channel. In addition, the premium membership includes research study groups, webinars, a document and movie library, a live video stream of Ground Zero, a monthly Zoom chat with me, and other bonus content. Be sure to check out our yearly specials as well. Sign up today while you're thinking about it. Sign up at Aftermath.media. Again, that's Aftermath.media.
back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Daliah, 1-877 DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to y'all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Dr. Daliah and on Facebook, The Dr. Daliah Show. So I have been saying for years that I want politics out of medicine. I think we all do. And so when we went through the whole COVID vaccine issue, now, I was telling you what I was taught in medical school, and medical school used to be very non-political. And so I would convey to you what was basically bipartisan or nonpartisan medical theory and medical ideology. So a dirty mask that you're wearing every day that's, is in your pocket that's been used and not thrown out and replaced is not offering you full protection. A mask that's not an N95 respirator is not necessarily going to be protecting you against, viruses. You need to be in a better mask. Vaccines provide artificial immunity to hopefully work with your natural immunity. So a combination of the two is probably the most ideal, as opposed to just going straight vaccine or just going straight natural. Again, everything I said has been proven in science. And so when the right and the left decided to make the vaccine right and left issues, which was kind of interesting because there were a lot of Democrats and liberals who were telling me they did not want to get the vaccine, and there were a lot of Republicans who were pro-vaccine. It was never supposed to be right or left. Medicine should never be. But it did decide, the argument did decide to go that way because that's how politics like to do things. They want to divide people and they want to find, okay, so if you think like this is where you are. If you think like this is where you are. So that's why a lot of people are kind of confused who want government out of abortion. Now that Roe v. Wade was overturned, saying the feds are out, some people are, well, wait a second. So is that right or left? Because, so people start getting confused. Of course it's confusing because politics aren't supposed to be in medicine. Okay, medicine is supposed to be between the person and their doctor and their medical team and their family. All right, that's where abortion should be. It should never be in the government's hands. It should never be the taxpayers' hands. It's between a person and their doctor and the family, figured out what the safest thing and the best thing to do for the fetus and for the parent is. That's the way, medicine should be. Same thing with a vaccine. Your taxpayers should not be, involved. Your president or your senators or your city officials or your hospital CEO, it's what is safe for you. So there's a way to do medicine that is very non-political. But politics got involved and they really messed things up. And so when I heard that Trump was going to have, who's Republican, a Democrat, RFK Jr., come in and run the HHS. The first thing I asked is, one, does he have medical background? Because I do like Kathleen Sebelius, who was head of HHS. She was a political science major. I really do like somebody with a medical background. But RFK Jr. did surround himself with people who are in medicine. And the reason why I supported the idea of RFK Jr. being chosen and appointed is because he promised what I am hearing patients and doctors want for years, which has never been suggested until RFK Jr. suggested it, that he was going to have the transparency needed and the evaluation of certain narratives evaluated to make sure that is the safest thing for people. And that's kind of what parents want. It's not just a couple vaccines their kids are getting. Now their infants are getting multiple shots in their leg. Are all those shots safe? Are they necessary? I support our robust vaccination program, but I do think as people are changing, as they have different body dynamics, they're obese, their food is different, the formula could change, fewer babies are being breastfed. We do need to reevaluate the vaccines. If people are getting measles who were vaccinated for MMR, do we need a booster? Let's evaluate. I had said for years with the COVID vaccine, maybe we need an updated COVID vaccine because the strain keeps changing. That's what we do in medicine. But apparently 1,000 people, prior employees and current employees, want RFK Jr. to resign. They say that he is putting the health of all Americans at risk, regardless of their politics. They want health policy based on strong evidence-based principles rather than partisan politics. So, if a healthy individual, basically this stems from RFK Jr. saying, look, if you're pregnant and you have healthy children, we're not going to force the vaccine. It's not going to be everybody has to get this. It's up to you. If you want to get it, you can get it. But we are going to recommend it for high risk. Well, people start to have a cow about that. Because as I said, insurance companies, as I said in the previous segment, insurance companies will use the USPSTF or the CDC as guidelines on what they have to pay for or not. But I think a lot of us doctors and a lot of us parents are asking, does a healthy 6-month-old need an mRNA COVID vaccine on top of all the other vaccines? Will that vaccine interfere with the efficacy of the other vaccines that are being injected at the same time? Has anybody studied that? If we haven't studied that, let's just take a step back. For those parents who want their children to get it, it's there. But rather than making a blanket recommendation, let's just, it's there if you want it, but let's evaluate. Because I need to make sure these kids' polio vaccine is taking. That their tetanus, their pertussis, the vaccines these kids are getting, I want to make sure that takes. So is it necessary for them to get an additional one if they're not high risk? So why not look? In fact, that statement is nonpartisan. But people are saying that's partisan. So in this letter, they also wrote the letter not only to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., but letters to Congress. They want him to resign. Now, what we were talking about in the previous segment is, as a doctor, I told you, I get asked this all the time. When are we doing too much medicine? When are we not? Well, the United States Preventative Services Task Force is very controversial because they have more of an attitude of do less. You aren't screening for thyroid cancer regularly. We aren't screening regularly for prostate cancer. It depends on the patient and their doctor, even though I do think black men are at higher risk of aggressive prostate cancer. I think insurance should pay for screening. But the USPSTF is more relaxed about certain screenings. Self-breast exam, checking your breasts. I think it's extremely important for you to know your map, you to know your body. So if you're like, something's not right, I need to get it checked out. Self-breast exams are not the USPSTF recommendation. So USPSTF goes by the narrative of don't do too much. Okay. If that's what we're doing, we're not going to do too much because the risks outweigh the benefits. Then why isn't that the same narrative to vaccines? If a healthy pregnant woman or a healthy 6-month-old doesn't need the COVID vaccine, I thought we're not doing too much. We can't have hypocrisy. Now, we need individuals with medical backgrounds, people who are independent, to kind of look at this and make decisions for the public, because we're doing a lot. We're doing a lot when it comes to vaccines. And I'm glad we have vaccines. But you're having a tough time convincing patients to do one versus the other. Patients are asking for ultrasounds to be a part of the regular screening. No, because there could be false positives. I'm like, well, okay, I see you're really gung-ho on vaccines, but what about all the other things we need for breast cancer screening, for vitamin D testing, for cholesterol screening? We're either going to be aggressive or we're not, but we can't be aggressive on one thing and not aggressive on another. And we also have to always reevaluate the science. That's just what we need to do. Natural immunity was challenged by the Biden administration when they said, look, you cannot rely on natural immunity. COVID is killing. They weren't entirely wrong about COVID killing. COVID killed. But they were so overwhelmed and needing to get that vaccine out and with the mandate that those of us who said, look, can we also look at what we could do to build our natural immunity? But a doctor who brought that up in Maine got suspended and had to be psychiatrically evaluated and go through therapy for bringing up natural immunity. Okay, no. That's not how the government should be running, and that's not how healthcare should be run. Now, I understand a lot of people do not like RFK Jr. because he wants to, not have blanket aggressive, statements as it pertains to vaccines. But as a doctor, and I speak to a lot of doctors and patients, we would like to make sure that whatever information is given to us has been evaluated correctly. Things were rushed during the COVID pandemic, and understandably why. So now let's take a step back and figure out what it is we need. 1-877-Doc-Daliah. Don't go away. Dr. Daliah here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
We're back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. DOCDALI. So, it's been kind of hectic. I think this year, 2025, we're almost done with. We're now in September. This has definitely been a very tumultuous year. My family went through a lot. I'm going through a lot with my family right now, my extended family. Not really happy with them. I'm kind of the one that gets dumped on and taken advantage and lied to, and and I'm trying to, still be a part of the family, but I'm just, when you have family members that screw you over, it's not easy. And I don't want to, on my show talk bad about, family. And I love my kids and husband. We're talking about extended family. But I also want to, allow you guys to, have conversations about it amongst yourselves, or just even with me, when you are going through the same thing that I'm going through. And I just want to say out there that, we look at family as they do on TV, where the mom is always there, and protecting you with her bosom and arms, and you always have a place to go with mommy, and your home will reach for the stars, because if you fall, we'll always catch you, and there's all these, and I never had that, with my family. I always thought my brothers and sisters were going to be my brothers and my sisters. No, I love them, but the things family do to each other is pretty cruel. Even as kids. I wasn't the best sister. I would tattle. I didn't want to get the belt. And I was so afraid of the belt that, I wouldn't do something to make sure they got it. If I did it, I did it. I would never blame the kids on, something I did. But, I didn't stand up and help them. I didn't. And so we as kids, we hated each other. And, then, now you're grown up, and you're like, we should be able to get over all the antics that happened as kids, but then the adult behavior is not that good. And so, here I am, and I'm middle age, and I've seen it all with families. And it's still taken me a real long time to come to the realization that this idea of mommy and daddy and, your brothers and sisters, blood is thicker than water. It just isn't relevant in my world. And I think that's irrelevant in a lot of people's worlds. And for years I'm going through, well, there's something wrong with me. I have a dysfunctional family. Maybe families are supposed to be dysfunctional. Maybe they never function well. I don't want to believe that because I see some functional families. But the closer I get to some of my friends and the closer I get to people, I realize, no, they have dysfunctionality also. They put on a good front for everybody to see. And see, me as a doctor, I don't like doing that. I know a lot of you say, gosh, I'm really open on my show. I talk a lot about things, the hysterectomy, the colonoscopy, love life, all that stuff. I'm very, very open about things. But I do that because I'm sick and tired of the fakeness that I see with everybody else. The Wizard of Oz curtain. Everybody has a messed up closet or a room that's not clean or dirty laundry but that's not what people do. They air out, the best. Oh, look, we're all happy. We're this. And then all of a sudden things fall apart and you're like, why? What's going on? The high suicide rate that's out there. I really blame a lot of suicides on people thinking that their situation is so unique and they are so alone. I'm open because I don't want people to think they're alone. If you had parents that did bad things to you, that, hated you, that were your worst enemy, you're not alone. That happens. And sadly, it happens a lot. But, I am grateful for my parents, and I loved them. It's because I realized what they went through that could have possibly made them the way they were. I think my father had CTE from his military duties and from playing soccer. And I think a lot of his behavior was because of brain trauma that he had. And then I think a lot of my mom's behavior was because her mom had told her that she wished it was she that died and not her brother who died of leukemia at 13. And so when you start to see how they grew up and what they kind of went through, you kind of understand why they weren't perfect. But also what I do, what keeps me level-headed about things, if bad things happen to me and I had to overcome house fires, pets don't even want to go into what happened to our pets, rape, how did I overcome? Well, one is I always thought somebody had it worse. So knowing that somebody had it worse, I was like, I better be grateful that this is all that happened. I had a family member who was gang raped by multiple people. I was only raped by one. And I know that's a weird way of looking at things, but it helped me get through it going, I was lucky, it could have been worse. Also, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I owe so much of my success to my family. If my family was all about kissies and hugs and ticklies, how is that preparing me for the cruel world out there? There's good people out there, but it's also pretty damn cruel. And I got to tell you, my mom and dad prepared me for that. I hated them for how they prepared me. We weren't close. But I got to tell you, I'm a much different parent than maybe I could have been because I'm trying to do the opposite of what they did. Now, with my boys, it's been, kissies and ticklies and farting sounds, and I start to worry, am I really preparing them for life? And luckily, Corey, my husband, was really good about, teaching them how to hunt and fish and start a fire and, camp and things like that. And I also, when I realized that, the ticklies are only going to go so far, they know I love them. Now I need to kind of teach them, about real world type stuff. But, if you are, kind of going through what I did, where you're like, I come from a dysfunctional family. How do I, become, normal again, or I think it is the norm. I think the average family has people that cheat, that hurt, that steal, that kill, that take advantage, that are parasites. And once you come to that realization, you realize TV is wrong. Yeah, I mean, it's not. We're being pitched something that isn't necessarily true. This is part of the reason why Gen Z isn't getting married. They're, they're acting like, that your high school sweetheart is going to be with you for life, and nobody's, telling you how bad a divorce is. So they're going the other way. They are so afraid of the failure of a failed marriage that they don't even want to try. There's got to be a happy medium. And you also have to teach people who get married. Some days are going to suck. You're not going to always, be in agreement. You will fight. You will need space. That's normal. But nobody tells you that a dysfunctional family can sometimes be pretty common. They tell you it's dysfunctional, meaning there's something wrong with that. But I'd like to know when, and I'd like to see a family that does function correctly. And I think that's what we need to work on as society, because we've really let our family go. And when family members do to you worse things than your worst enemy, we need to redefine what family is. 1-877-DOC-DALI. Hey guys, it's Dr. Daliah. Fantasy football season is coming, but sadly, too many of you are taking the bench while the country takes part in one of the most exciting and lucrative industries out there. Don't know how to play? Well, huddle up and listen. Paul Kalikas and I have written a fantasy football pocket guide for beginners. This book walks you through the basics and shows you how simple and lucrative joining or creating a fantasy football team can be. Read our fantasy football pocket guide for beginners found on Amazon, or follow the links on X and Facebook. That's Fantasy Football Pocket Guides for Beginners. Don't be left out.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit, and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99799, and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99799. Again, FREE to 99799.
As an organ donor, your story doesn't have to end. The good in you can live on. In fact, you could save up to 8 lives and restore sight and health for many more. Sign up right now online as an organ, eye, and tissue donor. You'll be happy you did. And just maybe, someone else will be happy too. Go to organdonor.gov. It saves lives. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
All right. We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So we do have some breaking news. In Florida, they are stopping the vaccine mandates for all childhood vaccines. So for kids that want to attend public school, they are no longer going to be mandated to get vaccines. Now, I know this is going to be very, very controversial. There's going to be a lot of back and forth, but let me tell you what the Surgeon General has said. So the Florida Surgeon General, Joseph Ladapo, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, announced at a news conference that the state is no longer going to mandate that kids who want to attend school have to be vaccinated, including MMR, polio, tetanus, chickenpox, hepatitis. And he likens it to slavery. He says every last one of them is wrong and drips with disdain and slavery. He says, who am I as a government or anyone else or as a man standing here now to tell you what you should put in your body? Who am I to tell you what your child should put in their body? I don't have that right. Now, Idaho, this isn't the only state that's done this. Idaho has, I believe, also done the Medical Freedom Act, being reported by Daily Mail. It bars private businesses, school, and government entities from denying admission or services to a person for not having received a medical intervention, such as a vaccine, a procedure, or medication. Now, the CDC estimates that these shots save 4 million lives every year. But this is the first state to eliminate it more directly in terms of kids going to school. So you couldn't go to school without getting vaccinated and showing your vaccine record. That's the way it's been for forever. The thing is now parents are pulling their kids out of school. And I told you the COVID vaccine mandate would do this. I love the fact that we have a polio vaccine and we have a robust vaccination schedule. But we are really freaking parents out with all the vaccines. And now there's this back and forth with the COVID vaccine on top of that. And you know, schools, some schools are mandating also the flu shot. Other schools are some school districts are mandating the flu shot. Others aren't. And so parents keep asking, when is this going to end? I am injecting my kid over and over and over again. And Americans, one thing that America is about, one thing that is our creed is government staying out of our body, government staying out of our business. And so now we have this controversy over vaccines. Now, I do not want polio coming back. So what is the best way to prevent polio? Well, vaccines are considered the best way to do that. But as I said before, we got to play the long game. If you are bringing parents to their breaking point, where now so many of them are homeschooling, saying, I'm out. I don't trust any of the vaccines. And you're like, no. I understand the COVID vaccine mandate went too far. I get that. But don't just give up on all of them. Right now, trust in the government and trust in vaccines is at an all-time low. And I knew that the COVID vaccine mandate was going to be the straw that broke the camel's back. When parents saw Biden fire people in the military, when they saw hospitals fire their nurses who were on the front line, helping people with no protection against COVID and surviving it, and you fired those same people a year later because they wouldn't get injected with a shot, it immediately looked like government takeover. And what's sad about it is the COVID vaccine, does work. It does help fight COVID, but they went too far. It should have been a choice. And when they said, well, it has to be for herd immunity, and I said, look, you're not going to get herd immunity with COVID. It's not the type of virus you can do herd immunity with. Okay, we're going to have to figure out how to get some natural immunity and figure out how to work with it and get ourselves healthier so we don't succumb to something. But, trying for herd immunity where the little vulnerable calves are protected by the big cattle in the herd, those big cattle have vaccines per se, can provide that shield of and deflect anything coming to them. That's called herd immunity, basically. And so when I said, guys, that's kind of a false narrative. We're not going to get herd immunity with COVID. I get that you want to try, your heart is in the right place, but you're firing police officers. You're firing nurses. We don't have enough hospital beds and we don't have enough staff for those hospital beds and you're firing them. And so now where we're at is parents are pulling their kids out of school. They don't trust any of the vaccines. Now, I don't want polio to come back. I don't want these diseases to come back. But is there a better way? Is there a better way than mandating? Now, we have been successful at eradicating polio, at eradicating smallpox, at eradicating a lot of things, but they do come back. And they do come back in unvaccinated populations. Can we still protect people if it's a choice? Can we still allow a human to decide what gets injected into their body or their child's body? Or do we have to, take over with mandated vaccines? That's going to be something doctors are going to go back and forth on. Me, I want the long game. I want us having vaccines. I want us using vaccines. I want parents trusting vaccines. But we screwed up the last few years. And parents want answers. So if we are going to take a step back and go, look, and this is what RFK Jr. had promised. We're going to put the studies up on the website for you guys to read the studies yourself. You guys are going to make your own decisions. This is why, the vaccine is there. These are the side effects. These are the benefits versus the risks. And as a human and as a doctor, we do informed consent for everything. But even with vaccines, it's okay. We got to give the kids a vaccine. It just works. And I get people were scared to death of polio. They're scared to death of hepatitis. They're scared to death of measles, mumps, rubella. And measles can kill. But do we have to mandate these vaccines? And if parents are now pulling their kids out of school, not only because of the vaccines, but because they don't think the kids are learning, et cetera, what's the long game here? Are we doing too much? I'm glad kids don't get chicken pox anymore. I think it's great that we have a vaccine. Does it have to be mandated? Or do we have time to say, look, chickenpox is going around. So for those parents that want their kid to get the chickenpox vaccine, we have one. Problem is you do need the vaccine in you for at least a couple weeks to gain immunity. But parents want to have a say. And I think they do deserve a say. Now, you do have idiot parents out there. I get that. And I know there's the question, well, what if there's a parent that's anti-vaccine and the kid wants to be protected? Remember, there were kids that were allegedly sneaking off to a pharmacy to get a COVID vaccine because their parents wouldn't let them. I don't know how, many kids did that. Most kids I know did not want to get the vaccine. But, this is obviously something that I think has been brewing for a while. It's just now that these kids are getting so many vaccines, parents are giving up. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens in Florida. Florida was the test case for letting people go back early, not shutting down schools and businesses like California did. And studies found that person for person, they didn't have increased morbidity or mortality. That it made no difference. Not doing lockdown versus lockdown. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes out of Florida. I just don't want to see polio coming out of Florida or other things. So I still want to make sure that we protect the populations who need them. But this is some breaking news. We'll keep you posted on how this evolves. 1-877 Doc Daliah.
Can you believe, with all the recent violent protests, looting, and destruction, some areas are considering either defunding or abolishing the police? At a time when America's neighborhoods need the protection of police the most, some elected officials would rather create more chaos by playing politics. If you're sick of elected officials caving in to demands of the radical left, you're not alone. It's time we stand up and declare our support for local police. The majority of police officers are important partners in protecting our God-given rights. If you prefer freedom over chaos, then learn how you can help protect the local police that serve your community. Call today and request your free Support Your Local Police info packet. Dial 800-JBS-USA-1. That's 800-JBS-USA-1. Request your free Support Your Local Police info packet by calling 800-JBS-USA-1 today.